what you get back to surface is a series of smaller rock chips and dust, which is then collected. And, the geologist at the drill rig can take a look at that. But because it's all just a bunch of chips, it's much harder to determine things like, what the rock type actually is, textures, structures, all of the things that the geological information that we like to have.
On 13th of May, there was a press release from Newrange that there has been initiation in diamond drilling. So first, what would be very interesting for us is to understand, what is diamond drilling? Is it like a real diamond attached and then you drill with it? And what happened? Like, if you can just shed some light on the press release.
Sure thing. Well, in terms of what is diamond drilling, the name comes from the fact that the drill bit, so the piece at the end of the drill rod that actually spins around and cuts the rock, is actually impregnated with a whole series of tiny diamonds. So there really are diamonds involved in the process, and it's because diamonds are so hard, they can cut through pretty much any rock type. And so the drill rod spins at very high speeds, and so it's a hollow tube, if you like, that spins around, drills down through the rock, and so you're left with a core of rock that you can then retrieve, bring it back to surface, and you bring it out of the tube, break it and put it into boxes where the geologist can then examine it, and then it gets sent to the assay lab to determine if there's any minerals there. So that's diamond drilling, as opposed to reverse circulation drilling, which is a different style of drilling, which is very common in Nevada. And this is what we had been using up until this current program. With reverse circulation drilling, it has a different type of bit at the end. So it doesn't have diamonds, it doesn't cut in that sense. You don't have a core to look at. It often just breaks and grinds up the rocks as it drills down. And then what you get back to surface is a series of smaller rock chips and dust, which is then collected. And the geologist at the drill rig can take a look at that. But because it's all just a bunch of chips, it's much harder to determine things like what the rock type actually is, textures, structures, all of the things that the geological information that we like to have. And then the bag of chips just essentially goes to the assay lab for the analysis. And so this is where RC is typically faster and cheaper than diamond drilling, but you don't get the level of geological information that you get from diamond drilling. And so at this stage in our program, we've chosen to go with the diamond drilling, which is slower and more expensive, but you do get that geological information. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but at this point in time, we need that geological information to better understand the details of what is causing the mineralization, why it's there, and in order to try and predict, where else on the property, should we be looking? What characteristics should we be looking for in order to find more? And so that's where the geology becomes very important.
If I also be my other question as well, that what would be the short-term and the long-term plan? Let's say in next 4 months, what is the unanswered question you are trying to answer? What is the, what will make you and your team satisfied in next 4 months and say, okay, we did our job good? What findings would that be? And what do you see in next coming 1 year?
Right. So with the announcement that we started drilling, we're basically launching on a new phase of the exploration at Pamlico. And I mentioned before about another methodology that we use called geophysics, and there are different styles of geophysics as well, but the one that we have used is called induced polarization, or IP.
Okay.
And the IP detects fine-grained sulfide mineralization, and
Yep.
by sulfides, it typically mean, in this case, pyrite, which some people may know as fool's gold. And pyrite is very common, but what we see at Pamlico is that the gold is almost always associated with pyrite. Now, the reverse is not always true. When you find pyrite, you don't always find gold. But nonetheless, the fact that there is an association, when
Yep.
you can combine that with other characteristics, that's where the recognition comes into play.
Got it.
And so we've been conducting a large-scale geophysics and a large-scale IP program across the property, and we have identified now more than 30 square kilometers where we have a cluster of very large anomalies, we'll call them, very large targets that seem to be indicating concentrations of fine-grained pyrite in the ground below surface. And so by combining those targets, those geophysical targets,
Yep.
with other characteristics that we can recognize, then that's how we choose the targets for the drilling. And then by following through with that and conducting drilling on those targets, that's where we hope to make a significant discovery. And so we'll be doing that over the course of the next 4 months.
Yep.
And a similar approach has been taken at the Red Lake project in Ontario, where we've also conducted an IP survey up there as well.
Yep.
And we have a target horizon there that is 8 kilometers long. And so, if we're successful in finding gold, along that horizon, then, with something that size, there's potential for, a very major discovery there as well. So between the two projects, we'll be drilling those over the course of the next 4 months.
Yeah.
And because of the size, the potential to make a very significant discovery, that's ultimately what will drive the share price if we're successful.
Got
So in terms of, you mentioned an unanswered question, really the big thing there is, what is driving the gold mineralization at these two projects? Because we know that there's gold on both projects. But what we've seen to date is not the large scale, deposit that we're looking for. And so we're getting little sniffs. So you might think of it in terms of, the expression that where there's smoke, there's fire. And so we've been finding smoke and little sparks, but we're still looking for the fire. We're looking for the embers, the big blaze, and that's really what's driving the whole system. So that's the unanswered question. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to make that significant discovery, and that's ultimately what drives most exploration geologists is just that, that desire to find something significant like that.
If just for a normal person like me, if I maybe put you under pressure and ask you how optimistic you are and what is the probability you have in your mind of finding something useful.